I lost my husband more than a decade ago. I'm 56, female. He ran a good logistics business that took care of our small family well. But when he died, I was forced to take over as he was only a child. I never wanted to work, and he was more than happy with being a housewife. But after some training and the help of my brother, I was able to transform a small business that sustained a single family into one that was able to provide for my needs, my daughter's needs, and those of the rest of the extended family. It was really hard, raising a daughter as a single parent, and she was not exactly a meek child, but I loved her that way. She was obedient and only questioned me when she didn't understand my demands or when she wanted to prove her point. I sent her to the best schools and gave her everything that she wanted. But to my dismay, I had not gotten what I wanted. It turned out that my daughter wasn't the brightest flower in the bunch. And despite using money to cover up what she lacked academically and getting good tutors, it wasn't enough. She was unable to get a good job after her college education. So I decided to teach and train her so that she could take over her father's business. She was my only baby. And after all, while that little fear I had that made me doubt her was present, I did my best to remind myself that there was no human being that could not be taught. She was a good listener, once she was focused, and I placed her in charge of a single branch in the beginning. All was well at first until I noticed a decline in profits. I couldn't even reach out to my daughter at the time, and after interrogating some employees, I found out that she had been slacking off at work. All because of a man, the same man that she wants to get married to, and the same man that I did not approve of. I never liked James from the very moment I knew he existed. When I knew that he was the source of my daughter's distractions, I went to see her without informing her prior to my visit. She had told me that she kept James away from the knowledge because he wasn't the kind of man that I want for her. I found her statement ridiculous until I met James. At least Vivian knew me that well. I'd given James a chance in the beginning. He was smart and would easily charm any woman. But there was a look of desperation in his eyes. And I saw the way he looked at my daughter like she was an object, a means to an end. It didn't sit right with me, and despite telling Vivian just to leave him for someone who would treat her right, she didn't listen. My own daughter yelled in my face and told me that I was not interested in her happiness, and that I only wanted her to work for money. I was dumbfounded, and I still am whenever I think about it, and why is that our children think that we only force our will on them and don't think about their well-being and futures? I'd seen that my daughter did not excel at much after doing everything possible to help her succeed academically. Then I had to see to it personally that she gained the skills necessary to run a business so that she would do something good with her life. How that backfired on me and turned into me being a terrible mother is something I'm unable to comprehend. After deducing that my daughter would not do the smart thing by leaving James, I went to James myself. My methods of locating him were not exactly legal, but once I found out his address, I went to see him myself. He lived in a shabby place, and everywhere was unkempt. When I walked in, I knew I was right then. Our discussion only proved my theory further. James had told me that he loved Vivian and wanted to be with her, and when I asked if he was really serious with my daughter, there was a slight hesitation in his demeanor before he replied. I'd seen all I wanted to see. An irresponsible man who was only taking advantage of my daughter, who had never been in a relationship to my knowledge, and nothing was going to make me consent to this. I spoke to Vivian one last time. She refused to see reason no matter what I told her, and I had no choice but to force her into ending things with James. I had told her to resume work and focus on her life, or quit her job, and it worked. Things were back to normal at the branch she was at, and while we did not speak unless it was business-related, I was happy that she had decided to be serious with her life again. Hopefully she would realize that James was only a distraction. I didn't need her apology or a thank you. I just wanted my daughter to be the best version of herself, so that when the right person came, she would be happy with the person that she was when she moved into the next chapter of her life. I was wrong to think that my obedient daughter would ever listen to me. It was shocking to see her just straight up barge into my house 2 weeks ago, which, by the way, was 6 months from the date that I threatened her to start working. Vivian told me that she was now engaged to James, and began to beg me to accept him. She told me that she had only stopped working to help him do something with his life and had lent him money from the company's profits to open a small car part shop. I don't remember being that furious in all of my days, and in my anger I yelled at Vivian. I've always been gentle but firm with her, but I lost my cool. I regret it and the argument that followed suit. I told Vivian that I would never support her engagement to James, and told her to end her relationship with him now if she still wanted to live in the house as my daughter. I'd rather not say all these things, because I'm upset at myself for saying certain things to my daughter, and like I previously said, I regret losing my temper. She left the house, of course, and I did not hear from her till yesterday. She and James have been living together in a new apartment, and she came to ask for my forgiveness, saying she overreacted and should not have stolen from the company. I'd thought that she had finally come to her senses, only to, have her tell me that she was planning to get married to James and needed both my blessings and financial help. As she went on and on about not wanting to be on bad terms with me before and during the course of her marriage, all I could think of was telling her to be quiet. She wasn't listening to the fact that James was no good, and he was clearly not going to leave till he was done with his damage. In the end, I told her that we were still on good terms, but that I would have never accepted James as my son-in-law. Vivian pleaded with me, and when she saw that I wasn't going to budge, she yelled a few profanities and walked out of the house. I've been unable to sleep because I keep thinking of ways to save my daughter. Do I give James money to leave her alone? Why was I the only one seeing that he was dangerous? Am I overreacting because I'm ready for my daughter to not get married yet? I doubt it's the latter, but so many thoughts have crossed my mind lately, and I'm sick of overthinking. Pouring out my thoughts, it's been slightly helpful here, but getting answers would also be highly appreciated. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Oh man, today's story is insane. Let me know. Do you trust that mother's instinct to know what's right? Do you think that she's right or wrong? OP, let me know in the comments section. We have some updates to check out, guys. If you're new to the channel and you want daily stories, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Let's hop into the first update now. Update number 1. My daughter has done the one thing I cannot condone, and the only reason I haven't told both her and that useless excuse of a man she's interested in arrested is because I still want to give her a chance to redeem herself. Sometimes I'll be at work wondering how she thought of stealing money from the business and going along with it. Other times I'm convincing that it's all a nightmare because Vivian knows how much I care for the business. It was the only thing my husband left me, and she's tampering with its success, all because of James. The business is having some problems now, and we're currently understaffed because Vivian has employed really incompetent people, and I know James is responsible. I'd fired them all, but it's not easy to replace them because I'm twice as skeptical before hiring anyone. I was very surprised when a secretary from my daughter's branch emailed me, telling me that my daughter had been asking for thousands of dollars to be moved into her account. My daughter had been smart enough to approach a new employee who didn't know that she was fired, but that didn't matter. He had colleagues, didn't he? He could ask questions if he wasn't concerned or he wasn't certain if he had to perform such a serious transaction, couldn't he? At the same time, I couldn't blame him. I mean, she was my daughter and she knew everything about me. I know for sure that my financial officer had spoken to the employee in charge and let him know not to make such a mistake again. But the damage had already been done. Vivian and James had moved once again, and I'd found out their previous address and planned to question them after finding out my daughter had stolen from me. Her number isn't going through, and she isn't reading any of my messages, which means that she had changed his numbers. All of this is just to avoid confronting me. I know the best thing is to have the police involved, but I've never done something that drastic before. Besides, this is my daughter we're talking about, and she's only this way because of that man. They should be married by now, and I got an invite, a letter via post from Vivian 2 weeks ago, right after finding out about the theft. When I saw them, I knew that my daughter still cared for me. I would have interfered once again and tried to separate her from James, but she stole from me because of him. Now that plan is to sit back and relax. I might involve the police if things don't go as planned, because stealing is stealing. But I'll wait for a while. I plan to focus solely on the family business and take care of the damages caused. It's even a nice distraction as I wait for the inevitable to occur. The wedding is today and I won't be attending, but I'll still wish my daughter the best of what her marriage has to offer her. I hope marriage opens her eyes to the reality that's in front of her. Update number 2, 6 months later. The past few days have been absolutely eventful. Life without my daughter has become the norm, so much so that I was shocked when she contacted me. There was this visit as well, and somewhere in between the call and visit, a shocked revelation. I take everything one step at a time. I hadn't expected my daughter's marriage to last long, but 6 months meant trouble. I'd given them a year or two if Vivian decided to hold out, but after seeing her phone calls, I was surprised. There was a feeling of niceness knowing that I've been right all along. But then I was worried, Vivian is my daughter after all. But after everything's gone through and remembering what she had done for her husband's sake, I ignored my worries. The calls had become excessive, and when Vivian knew nothing was going to come out of calling me, she texted. That's how I learned that she was the breadwinner of the house, and that she was sick and tired of her marriage. The most important thing was learning that she was sorry for upsetting and stealing from me. She had come to her senses, but I wasn't going to make things easy for her. I made sure to ignore her text as well, and after sending her a simple okay, a few days ago, about 5 but not a week, I'd gone to dinner with one of my favorite clients. I wanted to get a warehouse in another state for business, and I just happened to see James at the far end of the restaurant talking to another woman. I'd recalled what my daughter told me about being the breadwinner of the family and arrived at 2 conclusions in the end. He was either hiding his money from Vivian, or he was being unfaithful to my daughter. I'd asked my driver to follow them, and I found out that it was the latter. I felt sad for Vivian for the remainder of the night. No woman should have to bear the pain of a cheating hubby. I wished that she had listened to me and left James, and now she's suffering. And the fool is doing whatever he likes with whomever he likes. At some point before my daughter's visit, I considered calling the police on James. I'd tell them that he was the brain behind my money getting missing, and all I had to do was convince Vivian to play along. If it wasn't the truth, yes, it's lying and the authorities would know it's punishable by law. But there are some people who should be shown a little mercy, right? Nope. James is a despicable person, and I will deal with him accordingly. My daughter was my main priority, but my pride would not let things get resolved just like that. Vivian visited me 3 days ago. After her visit, my sympathy for her disappeared. She had come into my home upset that I had not been taking her calls or replying to her messages. I told her I had no reason to, and she called me selfish and uncaring. She was the same daughter who couldn't care less that I was looking after her when I told her not to get married to James. She was the same daughter who stole money from me, leaving me to deal with the salaries of employees that month. She was the same person who walked out and refused to contact me until her marriage went south. And yet she could call me selfish. I'd not called the police on her and James, nor had I demanded my money, but I guess that wasn't enough. Before sending her out of my house, I made sure to remind Vivian of these things, telling her that she was no longer my daughter. I was going to make it official because I was sick and tired of doing so much for one person, only for it to turn around and bite me. As she spoke, I realized that my daughter is gone. If she had been a tad bit remorseful for what she had done, I'd have forgiven her on the spot and asked her to stay in the house with me. To my dismay, it was not the case at all. So I was going to be a bit selfish, uncaring mother for my daughter. Yeah. And as for James, he'll regret the day that he came into my life. Not only did he straight up mess with my daughter, he had convinced her to steal, and then become unfaithful because Vivian was no longer able to provide. He's going to see a side of me that nobody's seen before, and I can tell you that I will even be shocked in the end. Updates number 3. Hey guys, I'm back for another update. Well, Vivian visited again. This time was different though, because I have not even let her into the house in the first place. Yep, that's right. She was banging on the door, begging me to let her in, and left when I threatened to call the police on her. She was resilient, I'll give her that. But she managed to pull at my heartstrings. I'd expected at least an insult or two, but all there was begging and sobbing, and I had promised myself that I would not give my daughter the benefit of the doubt again. But I might be making a mistake, and it's scary to think of. Well, then there was James. Ever since I spotted him with another woman, I've been keeping a close eye on him. A lot of things aren't adding up, and that man is responsible for all of it. I've noticed that on certain days he would stay at a store for hours, and after making inquiries, I learned that he owned the place. I'd previously thought he was a worker there, but this man owned an entire shop. Well, 3 to be specific, because I had found out branches of other ones and confirmed it, and I thought he was poor and was trying to mooch off me and my daughter, and I was partially right. I'll get to that soon. Vivian saw that I was not going to let her see me, so she resorted to texting, and I ignored her messages, of course. She was smart enough to use another number, and I had accidentally opened her message and read it. I still read them till now, though I don't reply, and at times it frustrates my daughter, because I know she sees that I see the message. I'll explain why, though. A lot of things don't add up in the beginning, but now I can see what James had done to my family perfectly well. Vivian had told me that her marriage was failing earlier, but she had not mentioned any reasons as to why that was. Her messages, however, had made it clear to me that she was the sole earner in the family. She currently works 2 jobs and pays all the bills, and James was uncaring about it all, telling Vivian to reconcile with me so that she would get a better job and money to, quote, cater to the family needs. Honestly, what I read was that he wanted her to mend things between us so that he could keep extorting my daughter. I was right about him being with her only for the money, but wrong in the same situation. See, James had money. I had enough money to relocate or get a good apartment and a good car and regularly pay the bills and take care of Vivian, but he chose to sit home idle while my daughter suffered because she was married to him. He clearly didn't care about her since he let her do all the hard work and still yelled at her for not doing enough. It scared me, and once again I pitied my daughter, but she had chosen to be stubborn, and look where that had gotten her. A life with a horrible man filled with a suffering and heartache. My daughter had called, texted, and visited me earlier on because she was desperate to fix her relationship with her husband. She mentioned being tired of all of it, and I'm sure that's what she meant. Would she leave James, after all that he put her through? As wise as it was, he could not just go scot-free in the end. If she wasn't going to do anything about it, I would. I learned something else about that woman James was seeing. She wasn't just a random person, he seemed intentional about her. I had, out of curiosity, bumped into her while she was out of the way to work. And one conversation led to the other, and see, she was a nice woman and had a radiant personality, so it wasn't so hard to speak to her. I learned that James was funding most of her lifestyles and that she loved him. I don't know if she was aware that she's married, and I wasn't going to ask because that could ruin everything. The information I got from her was enough for me to form my hypothesis, which is most likely correct. See, James had gotten married to my daughter to get the money that he used to start up his business. He most likely lied to her about the shops that he owned or hid their existence from her, and he's still with her because he hopes to get even more money, from me. And when he's satisfied, he'll just leave my daughter for the woman he keeps actually seeing. There's also the fact that he's spending his earnings on the other woman, but I'm sure it's not all of it. I wonder where the rest of the money is, because he clearly isn't using it in his marriage. It doesn't matter. I'll be getting that money back no matter what. Update number 4, 3 weeks later. It's official. This is a short update, by the way, and the last one. Vivian and I no longer keep in touch with each other, and I've reported her and her husband to the law. So I don't have to worry about my money anymore. They've been legally instructed to pay the money or face jail time. The money was shared in half between the two of them, and they had to pay up in a year. That was me being gracious, and I had appealed on behalf of my daughter. The money she stole was accumulated income over 6 months. And unless she married a millionaire, there is no way that she was going to pay up in good time. I was going to punish her, but I'd at least be reasonable about it. Vivian humbly received her punishment, but James, on the other hand, had stood his ground, saying that he had no reason to pay me back the money that was taken from the company. Vivian had confessed that he had forced her into taking the money, or he would not get married to her. That apparently is punishable by law, and I'm glad that it is. He chose prison instead, and I don't care when he gets out. If he tries to be funny, he'll be obligated by law to work for and pay back the money. And if he decides to stay in there, well, it's not exactly fun and games in jail, is it? Either way, he's in hell, and that's what matters. All of his assets belong to me, and I was right. He did have a substantial amount of money. He couldn't even pity my daughter enough to give her some money to take care of herself for a day. Yeah, yet he called himself her husband. All of a sudden, his punishment doesn't seem to be justified now, does it? But there's nothing I can do at this point. I'm not sure, but I do think Vivian's getting a divorce from James. I heard her tell him something like that, but I wasn't really paying attention. I can't be sure. Is that really the case? Then I'm proud of my daughter, and it doesn't change things between us. But at least she's taking a step in the right direction. I hope she focuses on paying back the money, because I won't hesitate to put her in prison if she's defiant.